Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at another episode of our 2025 Spiritist Learning Series. We are so excited that you have joined us for this short but deep conversation about an important topic that can be easily applicable to our lives. We are very honored to have our friend Andreia Marshall-Netto here with us. We're going to bring her on in a little bit. She is a trove of knowledge. She's a great worker. She's a friend of ours, always willing to roll up her sleeves and work. And so we're thrilled to have her join us. Before we start, though, we just want to remind you that we have Spiritist groups in California throughout. And if you ever want to join one of them or perhaps attend a meeting in person, you are more than welcome to reach out to any of them or just pop in for a visit. And you can reach them via cowspiritist.org or just social media. So thank you very much for joining us here today. And we are very thrilled to have our friend. Look at that. There she is. Andreia, thank you for being here with us today.
Good morning, Dan. Thank you for having me. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here with us this morning.
Indeed. And, and Andreia does many things and wears many hats. She was originally born in Campinas in São Paulo. She lives in Florida since 1991, where she's very active in the National Spiritist Movement and the state movement as well. She's one of the directors at the Conscious Living Spiritist Group in Miami. And she's also, I want to say, the brains behind Leal Publisher and FEB Publisher. So we're really thrilled to have you here and helping us in many different ways.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much. Just to let everybody know, the work, it's open to everybody who wants to do it. So, but yes, the work that we do this is in hopes of disseminating Spiritism and more knowledge, especially with topics like the ones we're going to be discussing today.
Wonderful. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Andreia, with death and dying. That's such an important and timely topic. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me again on the 2025 Learning Series. I would like to ask your permission to start with a poem by Tagore. And this is when he was actually still alive, still incarnated, and he wrote on the fear of death, and he said, "Let me not pray to be sheltered from dangers, but to be fearless in facing them. Let me not beg for the stilling of my pain, but for the heart to conquer it. Let me not look for allies in life's battlefield, but to my own strength. Let me not crave in anxious fear to be saved, but hope for the patience to win my freedom. Grant me that I may not be a coward, feeling your mercy in my success alone, but let me find the grasp of your hand in my failure." This is from the Fruit Gathering. And we started with this poem because death and dying is something that, although this is it, we're going to go through it, it's inevitable. We reincarnate, we discarnate, and the process keeps going so that we can evolve spiritually. But it's something that we don't talk much about. If you say, if your mom, for example, says, when I die, most of us, we like, no, don't talk about that, knock on wood, so that it doesn't happen. But it's going to happen. And it's something that a lot of people consider to be tabooish, right? I got the interest on doing this study for our Spiritist Center here, but I haven't done it yet. So this is really good that I started looking over, because I follow a nurse on TikTok page. Later on, if Dan wants, I can share her information. But she brings us a lot of educational content and even videos from the patient's family's permission, of course, on many of the terminally ill or already on the dying phases patients that she has. And she talks about the signs that one can expect. I remember when my grandfather was in hospice care, he had a stroke. He had a stroke. And, we took him to the hospital, and then within a few days, he fell into a coma. And then 2 weeks later, he died. And while we were there visiting, we were given a booklet, what to expect, the signs. So a lot of people talk about how some of them, while still awake, let's say not in a coma state like my grandfather, they would reach up as if trying to reach for something that they can see and we cannot. They would mention loved ones, which to her is the most comforting aspect, because it shows that life continues and our loved ones come to our aid when a lot of times when we are close to disengage from the physical body. And a lot of times she is going to say, family members think it's the dementia that it's causing, but it's not. It is very solid. It is very concrete what she envisions. And so to me, it's a very enlightening page, because for the educational purposes, for a lot of people that, may be going through a terminal illness or have a family member that is going through a terminal illness, it gives a sense of serenity inside, because others are going through it and we have the courage. That's why Tagore's poem is so significant, because it gives us the courage to face what is about to happen, because nobody wants their loved ones to die, right? We don't want to be separated from our loved ones. Even if we know that it's a temporary separation, it still hurts, it still pains. And even if the case is with us, a lot of times we don't want to leave. We don't want to leave those that we love behind, especially if you're a parent, especially if you have somebody in your care, or especially because you just love life in the physical realm, and you just don't want to go, right? So this got me thinking a lot of it. One of the other process that she talks about that I wanted to share with you guys in this visioning process at the hospice care is something that a lot of family members don't understand, is that the visioning process actually starts way before the person dies. So it's not something that just happens right away. For example, when my grandfather had a stroke and we were in his house, we were all there, and we called the ambulance to take him to the hospital, because we did not know that it would be a hospice case. And I have a very good friend who was like a mother figure to me, and she came with me because my grandfather was the love of my life. He's everything to me, still is. And I was really sad. I was really scared of what was happening. And when I got in the room, we were there, he looked at me and he's like, "Look, Andreia, it's my wife, and she's got a nurse beside her." Now, mind you, his wife was the love of his life. She had already discarnated for over 20 years. And she was there. She was there. He said, they're smiling. And the nurse, she looks like an angel. And my friend who was with me confirmed the information because she's a medium. So that was very comforting. And I thank God so much for that to have happened, because even though I am a spiritist and I believe now, I know what, the information that we study to be true, because today we believe, tomorrow we don't. So to know is a lot different. It brought a lot of comfort. And lo and behold, a few days later, he went into a coma, and we were not able to speak to him for, again, because he was in the sleep state. On the other token, you see somebody like his second wife, and she was in hospice care for a while, so much so that after a while, hospice sent her home, because hospice care is when you are terminally ill, you're about to depart, right? And she was there for a long time, and her vital signs were stabilizing, and she went home. But she would say to me, "Can you move that chair on the side?" And I'll be like, "Well, we needed to sit." And she's like, "Yeah, but the man with the dark cape and the dark hat is staring at me." So obviously looking at the spirit realm, because she was not medicated so much that she would be having some kind of illusion. And so this is very real as well. So why am I saying all of this? Because this nurse is taking the time to ask the family's permission to bring information so that we understand what is happening and we can help our loved ones if something like this happens to us. And so we start facing with it with the courage that Tagore brings us in that poem, so that we can be also of service with the spirits, the benevolent spirits on the spirit plane, who are already there assisting us, who are already there to take care of what is happening to the person who is about to discarnate. And I have this amazing book that we got a few weeks ago from this doctor that is called Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She has a book that is called On Death and Dying, and it's for clergy, it's for medical students, it's for doctors, that helps in assisting in understanding what is happening to the person or to ourselves with us as we are dying. And she says, this idea is to remind us that if we actually face death, it's to see that if this is a big problem in our lives that we are unable to speak about, that we are unable to understand that it's going to happen. It could happen today, it could happen tomorrow. If death is viewed as a frightening, horrible, taboo topic, we are never going to be able to face it calmly. And hopefully when it's our time, our friends, our family members, it's going to be kind of hard, right? Because a lot of time we're going to see how many of us question, what can I expect when it's my time? Nobody has ever come back to tell me the situation, how it happened, not only the after death, not in the spirit realm, but the process in itself, the disengagement. Or as Allan Kardec brings us on a book that is completing 160 years this month, Heaven and Hell. There is on the second part a chapter called The Passage, in which he brings us information about exactly that. And not only that, we have several types of spirits that were in different situations upon discarnation, and they tell us what we can expect. So we had spirits that communicated in the mediumistic meetings that Allan Kardec participated in Parisian Spiritist Society. In the the Parisian Spiritist Society was open in 1859. So a lot of the spirits would communicate, and they were in different categories placed in this book to facilitate. So spirits that committed suicide, spirits that are hardened, like hardened criminals, spirits that are in the happy condition, in average condition, suffering spirits. And it is so interesting because I feel personally that it is very humbling to allow us incarnate beings to have access to something that is so personal and intimate. And the benevolent spirits allow this to happen for the purpose so that we know what to expect. And not only that, so that we still have time to modify how we live, how we feel, how we think, what we do, and we still have time. So we utilized another book that is very, very good, which is called Workers of the Life Eternal. There is a phrase in it that says, death is a millenary question that continues to wound sentiments and torture minds. But Spiritism arrives with these books with this invaluable work of affirming the continuation of life after death, the true life, the reality of it all, the natural phenomena that constitutes our path to ascension, to higher spheres, that which we are all destined to. And reincarnation allows us to have as countless opportunities as possible. It reminded me that the amazing medium Chico Xavier, he died, I believe, in 2002. Maybe Don can correct me if that's incorrect. But he would say that many times the fear of dying is an unconscious reminder of what we went through in the past. Meaning that a lot of times, if we were not living accordingly in a way that would facilitate our discarnation process, we bring that fear with us. We don't want it to happen again. But don't worry, we are studying about all of this so that we can understand and we can answer. Is death a sinister goddess? This is in the book Andreia Lewis brings us. Do we regard the temporary separation of death as a terrifying night of bitter farewells? Do we portray this natural phenomena of death as a terrifying situation that is going to bring the darkest of colors? Are we going to go to the umbral, that location that we are presented with in the book No Solar, in which Andreia Lewis finds himself in as an indirect suicide, meaning he led his life in such a way that he shortened it. And this is what in Spiritism we would call this indirect suicide. And how many of us still believe that the physical death after there's nothing more than either sing beatifically beautiful songs in heaven or the gnash of teeth in hell, right? This is what a lot of people question. And the reality is quite different. And this is why Workers of the Life Eternal, which was actually released in 1946, is this well-known Spiritist book psychographed by Chico Xavier or Francisco Cândido Xavier, and attributed to the Spirit Andreia Lewis, who narrates what happens. It is the fifth book following the series, which starts with the book I already mentioned, Nosso Lar. So what is it about? He is going to bring us narratives that describes the spiritual rescue mission in which they're going to be assisting 5 people that are still alive to discarnate. There are 5 individuals in very different situations with different religious background, including a Spiritist, including a Catholic, who are approaching the end of their earthly lives. And it is so beautiful because right away we understand that we have assistance, that benevolent spirits come to our aid when the near of the death is fast approaching. And so Andreia Lewis brings us the process of discarnation, meaning the transition from the physical life to the spirit life, the karmic consequences or the law of cause and effect, and how this also plays a huge role on how we lead our lives, how the spirit teams work to ease the suffering, not only our suffering, but also the suffering of those that are still here, and the organization of a spiritual colonies, the service teams, and the place that has been prepared for us. So why is this important? Because the book gives us insights into the afterlife. It gives us an insight of what the continuity of life actually looks like, and the compassionate work that is involved in all of this, behind all of this. It actually emphasizes that there is a mercy, that there is preparation for death, and the importance of living with moral responsibilities so that in living well, we die well. Interesting, right? We're not making something, paying homage to committing suicide, because this is another topic that we know we must touch when talk about death and dying, and what is the very first situation that a spirit who commits suicide is presented with. The very first disappointment is that life continues. Disappointment because the spirit thought he or she could end it at all, and the suffering would go away. And in reality, the situation becomes even more complex because there is consequences based on the law of cause and effect, not punishment, consequences. And even so, I remember the book Planetary Transition, in which the medium, Divaldo Pereira Franco, we miss him so much, he discarnated this year. The spirit author, Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, wrote through his hand the assistance that was given prior to the tsunami that hit the Thailand islands, where over 5,500 people died. I think over 6,000 people died. And if we read the book, we see that there are groups already stationed knowing about that situation that would cause a natural disaster, collective deaths, which a lot of us also question. You're going to see 6,000 people died, yet a baby was found alive floating on a piece of wood. How does this happen, right? And so there is assistance. And we're going to find out that there is assistance of spirits that are basically prepared to aid spirits that were criminals, spirits that were actually the spirit of distressed mothers that die and leave their young ones behind, especially when they're giving birth. There is also the assistance group, especially for those causes. There is also a group especially interested in the atheists because of their remorse in prison consciousness, which actually their state of mind came from a previous existence's disappointment with religion, the view of God, and even Jesus. There is also an assistance for spirits that are demented, that went crazy, that went insane, even for children. And Andreia Lewis is also going to introduce in the book the purpose of inspiring us to live more responsibly based on the examples that he brings us so that we can prepare for the spirit plane. So I'm just going to go through some of the chapters to kind of, fish and snag you and give you this curiosity to read the book if you haven't yet, or reread the book if you already have, because as I was preparing for it, I was remembering things that I had forgotten. And so on chapter 4, they visit a hospital. It was the very first stop that they had where they were going to assist a patient that was nearing death. And in it, they explained how the spiritual benefactors is there to help smooth the separation of the soul and the body, where fluidic passes or healing passes, that energy that we actually know of at the Spiritist Center, or anybody, if you are a mother and your child cuts, her or himself, the mother goes, "It's okay." And she blows with it, with the intention, with the will to make the child feel better. That's what healing passes are. So they do that, in symbolically speaking. Another one example that we can give. So fluidic passes to ease the process, and mental emanations as well to calm down the patient. Because in the hospice, when we see a patient that is a little bit agitated, the spirit, in a way, in some of the cases, they sense that it's happening and they become agitated. And this doesn't help the benevolent spirits with assisting us in the process. We actually resist the situation. And so they do that to calm down the patient. A lot of times, it's because the family members are there. And so the family members are emanating this energy that they want to hold the person. They don't want the person to depart. And that causes almost like a net imprisoning the being that is about to discarnate. So what do the spirits do? Something that is very classic in hospice cases as well. All of a sudden, the patient gets better. So much so that they sit up, they talk to the family members, and they say, "Hey, I'm feeling a lot better. You can go home and shower and rest and have a good night's sleep, eat something." And this is the time that when those that are, not feeling calm, not feeling ready for the situation, they leave. And in leaving, they let the benevolent spirits work. And that's when the disengagement happens, as in the case of the spirit of the man that was about to die, Demas. Demas was one of the cases, a spiritist whose family was still very much attached to him. And even though he was a spiritist, he didn't really guide the family to be ready for that when it happened. So 5 people: a devout Catholic, but she was fearful; a materialist man; a suffering soul with some debts from past lives; a medium needing help at the time of discarnation as well; and a spiritually prepared individual who also saw her own discarnation process, meaning her spirit was already disengaged and she could see the ties being undone, so to speak. We have to read the passage to understand exactly what I'm talking about on the book Heaven and Hell by Allan Kardec. So what is happening is that they teach us about the diversity of the experiences of death. Nobody dies, not everyone dies the same way, as much as not everybody reborns, reincarnates the same way. Every case is on a case-by-case basis and shaped by one's own moral and spiritual quality of life. And this is extremely important. On chapter 9, we are going to see the lessons on preparation, in which the benevolent spirit called Druso, he emphasizes for us, the readers, the need to live consciously. And he's going to say something like this: "No one improvises serenity at the threshold of death." There is no improvisation. We need to live consciously so that we are ready. There's no improvising. We are going to be ready at that moment based on this conscious way of living, in which the spirit life is the most important one, the true one, and the physical one, in which it's temporary. So this is going to also facilitate the team, because the discarnate teams that are there to help the 5 individuals to discarnate, they discuss and they tell us how our daily activities, daily attitudes prepare us for discarnation. And this made me think of the passage of Matthew on chapter 6. I forgot the verse, so I'm just going to say it as best as I can from my mind, in which Jesus said, "But seek first the kingdom of God, and everything else will fall into place." This is what he's talking about. It's looking to live this spiritual life, spiritually conscious, so that we actually understand, as we live like that, everything else is going to fall into place. Of course, we are on earth. We are having an earthly life, but we need to be in the world and not of the world, meaning we don't belong to it. The existence that we have belongs to us, and we make the most of it. So we don't become materially attached to things. You know, we see people that spend their entire lives looking to accumulate riches, and that's all they get at the end of their lives, because we take with us what we actually created, what we actually worked hard for. And we can take the wealth with us. So what do we take? We take the virtues that we worked on, the qualities, because the process of reincarnation is there to assist us evolve. They talked about the transition. They witnessed the moment of discarnation of these cases. The process is described in such a way that they tell us about how there is this magnetic disconnection, help from the mentors, the first impression of the nearly free soul if they are awakened. Some of them awake confused, while others have this clarity and peace, depending on their choices. And the main lesson that we have is that the preparation for death begins in life. This is why it's in Death and Dying, our topic today, because in cultivating virtue, in working toward forgiveness, in working towards forgiveness of oneself, because remorse in the spirit plane is very real. We are who we are in the spirit plane. What we feel, how we live, what we think, we are actually heirs of ourselves. And so when we pass on, this is what the spirit author is saying, we are not going to improvise a better situation. No, we are individuals. We maintain those qualities that we bring. And so this is why it's really important to understand this for the transition to be easier. They also talk about the real and constant assistance that we receive throughout our lives to make it better, because every discarnation is unique. It is going to be shaped by our beliefs, our attachments, the spiritual maturity that we have. And when we talk about shaped by one's different beliefs, we can see this clearly in the medium mystic rescue meetings at the Spiritist centers, in which different spirits in different situations will find that the belief that they had while alive wasn't true at all, that they were taken advantage of because of their faith. And it is very painful, very painful. And so that there is a teamwork that happens in the spirit realm, and we are called upon to be, if we are the ones that are seeing our loved one leaving, to also be with them, helping the loved one. In the case of Dimas, at his funeral, at his wake, a lot of people were talking about mundane things. A lot of people were laughing. There was so much lack of serenity, harmony in the ambiance. And we're also called upon that. At the moment when we are throwing a funeral, a wake, we need to be mindful of the ambiance, the atmosphere that is being created, because that also helps the discarnation process. At times, it is so complex that in the case of spirits who commit suicide, the spirit is still very much engaged. And a lot of spirits are still attached to their decaying corpses. We see this in a lot of the books by Andrew Lewis, and it's actually very scary indeed. But we see a very attached to materialism individual who finds himself wanting to hold on to that decaying body, wishing to go back to it, to become alive again. either to utilize their riches, either because they don't want to go, or remorse, the lack of forgiveness, this culpability that we bring a lot. So I can't go into every case because I want to get you interested in it, but we're going to see the case of Demas, who was prepared. We are going to see the case of Mrs. Evelina, who was a devout but fearful woman, and her attitude towards death. She was so afraid that she was resisting and she was clinging to her loved ones. And because of this, her discarnation was delayed and needed this gentle assistance from the benevolent spirits for her to let go of all of the attachments. And so they're going to teach us that faith alone isn't enough. We need this detachment and trust in God, which are the key to a smooth transition. We see the case of Cavalcanti, a man who was materialist. He was a wealthy man. He was indifferent to spiritual matters, and he was absorbed in the aspect of material possessions. And his process of dying is interesting because euthanasia took place. People talk a lot about dying with dignity, in which they seek euthanasia in other countries as if dying was something undignified, right? Dying with dignity is something completely different when we look at it from the Spiritist perspective. And the lesson behind his death is that materialism leaves the soul unprepared for the reality of the afterlife. And the euthanasia is very, very dangerous, and it is very, very hard for the spirit in the disengagement process as well. There is Ernesto, who's a burdened soul, a man that was carrying a lot of karmic debts, so to speak, from previous existences. And because of his unresolved guilt, he also had a very difficult disengagement. And so the lesson behind it is that the unsolved debts and the moral failings weighed heavily upon us at death. And this is why Allan Kardec talks about repentance and reparation, which are crucial. And this is where reincarnation comes in, giving us an opportunity to make it right again. And there's the case of the medium, who was a sensitive worker as well, in saying that even those who have this deep contact with the spirit world also are still in need of personal inner reform and balance, so that their dying process is easier. So the takeaway: no two deaths are alike. We have one's moral and emotional, spiritual state that is shaped by the experience we have in the physical realm. We see also that faith with detachment and service leads to serenity at the moment of discarnation. We are going to see that attachment, guilt, and disbelief make the process more painful. And it is not a physical one, it's a moral pain. I remember Divaldo Franco, this amazing medium who discarnated this year. He would say, I don't fear the physical pain because he went through a lot, but the moral one, in telling us that he still had a lot to grow, although I think that his discarnation process must have been unbelievable. If I could be a spirit fly on the wall to see it. And it also talks about the spiritual rescue teams that are always working in the aid of transitioning souls. And I wanted to bring you guys some phrases that, as I finish, on death and preparation that they brought us. So, no one improvises serenity at the threshold of death. It is the fruit of a life well lived. The one who learns to live for others learns also to die in peace. Death does not erase our conscience, it reveals it. Every attachment we nourish on earth is a weight we must release when crossing into the spirit plane. To prepare for death is to prepare for life with capital L, for death is only the continuation of our journey. On this note, I'd like to call back our host with the most and see if there are any questions or comments, and even Daniel's own feedback. Thank you. And see if there are any questions or comments.
Thank you so very much, Andreia. It was a pleasure to listen to you. We have a couple of questions, and we're going to ask to see if the folks have questions here, but there's always one that gets to people when they reach me here via phone. And the question is, what is your suggestion for preparing for the incoming passing of a loved one, right? Like a family member. Do you have any tips or some sort of pragmatic approach for us to get ready? You talked about about a lot of different things.
Yeah.
What's most helpful that you think for to help somebody who is getting ready to say goodbye to a loved one?
Yeah. I mean, my father discarnated in 2015 from cancer. And the way that I dealt with his death was very different from the way that I dealt with my grandfather's, because um, with my grandfather, I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't spiritually mature. I was 21, right? As opposed to 10 years ago, with my grandfather, I wasn't ready. I was 37, actually. And it was inevitable. I knew that my father's cancer was terminal. The doctor had told me that he had either 8 months to a year, and it was 5 months. And what we did is we had a lot of faith in what we studied, and we also had a lot of faith in the spirits who were there. We could feel them. Marcelo, my husband, and I would go give him healing passes. And we, in the process of the healing passes, I got goosebumps. In the process of the healing passes, our mind is really important with the will, our desire. We would pass on a lot of encouragement and a lot of courage for my dad. We would read to him things that were hopeful in relation to the afterlife. We would talk to him normally. And at the moment that we felt like we were going to lose it, because we do, as spirits, as we feel pain, for example, I would leave the room and say, hey, Dad, I'm going to go to the kitchen and get something to eat. I would step back, step out, cry a little bit, regather myself, and go back to it to take care of him, because his situation was more dire than mine. I mean, we have to understand that the process is so sacred in a way. We have to say that. It is sacred. He is actually finishing a battle. He's finishing a task on earth. He is returning home. And so to allow the person to receive this peaceful ambience is extremely important. No desperation needed. Why despair if we are going to see the person again? Oh, but I'm going to have to die to see them again. Not necessarily. When we sleep and our spirit partially disengages from the physical body, we go where our heart roams. So we meet with our loved ones. We are with them. And at times we even awaken feeling more comforted with these meetings. And not only that, the benevolent spirits take care of us if we are open to their care. And so when we sleep, they also come to our aid. They strengthen our beliefs. They strengthen what we are feeling, and they also take care of us. So my suggestion would be to seek serenity. It doesn't matter what your belief is. Prayer is one of the most important tools at that moment, not only for us, but for the person that is before us. My father couldn't speak because the tumor was reaching a place in his brain that he couldn't speak, but I would see tears falling, and our mission is also to console. Let me console more than to be consoled, would say Francis of Assisi. And so that's the moment that we serve. We are there to serve them and to make them feel at peace and to feel that everything is fine, everything is taken care of, and they don't have to worry about us. They don't have to worry about anything. Forgiveness is also important. I remember that there was one case really interesting of a person that was in the discarnation process of her own mother, and she was about to say goodbye because she was going home. She was going to come back the next day to see her mother, and she heard a voice saying, have you forgiven her yet? And this is also really important because we also need this ability to be able to release them from any guilt that they have. So forgiveness is key as well. There's so much.
Thank you, Andreia. That is so kind and nice of you to spend some time with us. We are reaching the end of our time together, but we want to thank you for all that you brought to us, and we wish you a wonderful day.
Thank
And
you.
we also, and we hope that everybody who has a chance to listen today may be inspired to think and reflect more about this important topic. And if you want to get a hold of Andreia, what's the best way for people to reach out to you and get to know more of your work?
Yes, so I have on Instagram, which is my name, Andreia.Marshall.Netto. That's just like that on Instagram. This is one of the best way to do it. We also have FEB Publisher on Instagram that you can send a message to, or you can send a message to info@lealpublisher.com, Leal Publisher.com. And I'm available about this topic or anything else that you guys have a question on the books that we release.
Well, this was Death and Dying with Andreia Marshall-Netto. I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Thank you so very much, Andreia.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.